After defeating Suzuri and his gang, the tattooed man suddenly appeared, and it looked like Tsubakino already knew him. In this video, we are now going to talk about who this tattooed man really is, as well as discussing the big boss of the bow foreign, Gojo Satoru. Hajime Umemiya.
Finally!
We will learn more about him and his past, as well as his goal for making bow foreign. Let's get started. In the next scene, we move to a grand celebration, where Kanji is delighted because the food looks delicious. He points out a dish that his long-haired friend likes, and it turns out that the friend's name is Miyoshi when he calls him. Miyoshi agrees and asks Kanji to bring it over. Kanji also spots a freshly made dish and asks his friend with a buzz cut for it, revealing the friend's name to be Hidaka when he calls him. Hidaka gets annoyed with Kanji because he hasn't even properly served the dish yet, and Kanji is already grabbing it. When Kanji takes a bite, he immediately spits it out because it's too hot. Another friend, with a mole under his lip, comments that the crunch sounds tasty and says it has an F-sharp tone. Shizuka is impressed that he can distinguish a tone from a crunch, and we learn that this friend's name is Odawa when she calls him. Tsubakino then wondered why Shizuka didn't know that and asked, "Doesn't Odawa help you with singing practice?" Tsubakino checks with the group if they have their drinks, and they all agree. After that, Kanji gets everyone's attention and explains that to celebrate Shizuka's grand rescue and commemorate Suzuri joining them, he declares that he will take care of all their food. He raises his drink and toasts to them enjoying the evening. Kanji and his friends immediately start enjoying the food, while Tsubakino serves them. Meanwhile, Sakura looks irritated, Nire seems scared, Suwa laughs at the two, and Suzuri remains quiet on the side. Tsubakino gets annoyed with them and explains that there's no point in dwelling on something that's already over. He suddenly thinks that maybe they just don't like the food he served them. Nire nervously explains that it's not the case, but it's just impossible for them to act like nothing happened after what they've been through. Sakura, unable to contain his frustration, slams the table, angrily grabs some food, and vows to get back at the bastard they encountered. In the next scene, we flash back to when the tattooed man appeared. He commented that happy and enjoyable things are just activities people do to pass the time until their lives end. While this was happening, Sakura wondered who the man was. It seemed that Tsubakino recognized him, as he asked the man why he was there. The man, standing on the rooftop of the building, suddenly jumped down with a flashy landing, catching Sakura and his friend's attention. However, despite his flashy entrance, the man appeared to have hurt himself upon landing. Sakura, Nire, and Suwa were stunned by his cry of pain. The man then remarked that he hadn't expected it to hurt so much to jump from the second floor since all the shows he watched made it look cool. Sakura was bewildered and wondered if the man was just messing with them. Soon after, Sakura felt a powerful aura that seemed almost demonic. When he looked at Tsubakino and his group, he saw that they all appeared defensive and very angry. Tsubakino warned them not to touch the man, while Kanji, seething with anger, said that the man had a lot of nerve showing up in their place. The tattooed man tried to calm them down, saying it had been a long time since he last saw them. However, if they were eager to fight, it would only get his blood pumping. The man smiled, and Sakura and his friends felt a sudden and intense pressure, prompting them to raise their defenses. The man clapped and remarked how cool the kids looked, acting like big boy heroes. Suddenly, someone beside Sakura spoke, saying that he was the one with business with the tattooed man. When Sakura and the others turned, he saw that it was Suzuri. Suzuri told the man that Sakura and his friends had nothing to do with this and asked him to talk elsewhere. Sakura was puzzled, and even more so when Tsubakino said he understood the situation. Tsubakino's eyes narrowed at the man, asking if he was right in assuming that the tattooed man was behind everything that had happened. Tsubakino's companions were visibly shocked by what they heard. Irritated, Sakura couldn't hold back and asked the man who he thought he was, showing up out of nowhere and acting like a boss. The man merely smiled and told Tsubakino that he should introduce his underclassmen because they seemed very confused. Tsubakino then explained to Sakura and the others that the tattooed man was from his generation. He was a former foreign student named Yamato Endo. Yamato smiled as Tsubakino introduced him, and when Sakura looked at Suwa and Nirei, he saw clear concern on their faces. Sakura then asked what was going on between the two of them. Suwa explained that he also knew about that guy, and that he was famous. Nirei added that there wasn't anyone in foreign who didn't know him, pointing out that Yamato could be compared to a legend. Sakura's eyes narrowed at Yamato, and Yamato commented that he was flattered by what they said and that he had only been gone for a year. Sakura's face showed his anger as he questioned Yamato's legend status, catching the attention of his friends. Tsubakino tried to stop him, but Sakura couldn't hold back anymore and said who cares what kind of legend Yamato is. He accused Yamato of leaving the actual work of capturing an innocent girl to others, calling him trash and an irresponsible asshole. Suzuri's companions were speechless, while Kanji, Tsubakino, and Suwa smiled, and Nirei, as always, looked terrified. Reflecting on what Sakura called him, Yamato said that Sakura couldn't say that because wasn't he from foreign, the heroes of the streets? So, he should watch his language. Then, Yamato pointed out that he realized he was talking to Sakura. He remembered Sakura's hair and eyes, and noted that he was there when some of Furin's group fought against Keel. Sakura was shocked, and Yamato added that he saw everything that happened there. He saw Sakura charge in alone, looking distracted while trying to take them down with a poor excuse of a fight. That's when he thought that people like Sakura didn't belong in Furin. Sakura's face was a picture of disbelief as Yamato added that he should just quit and leave. Sakura was left speechless by Yamato's words, but Nirei suddenly shouted that it wasn't true. Sakura turned to see that despite being terrified, Nirei was defending him, explaining that Yamato knew nothing about him and had no right to speak about things he didn't understand. Yamato smiled and mocked Nirei, saying he was trying to act brave even though his voice was trembling. Yamato then noticed something, and in an instant, Kanji and Tsubakino charged at him, their faces filled with intense anger. Their companions were also surprised, but Yamato easily dodged their attacks and asked why they were suddenly angry with him. Tsubakino, irritated, demanded that Yamato take back what he said. While Yamato was still explaining, Kanji followed up with another punch, asserting that no one was more suited to be part of Furin than Sakura. Yamato pointed out that Kanji couldn't say that because he wasn't part of Furin. Suwa then joined the attack, stating that if that's the case, then it could come from a foreign student, and attempted to hit Yamato with an axe kick. As his friends charged, Sakura watched, but soon he joined in, commenting that he shouldn't be left out of the action. He mimicked Kanji's previous move, using Suwa to boost himself towards Yamato and tried to kick him. However, Yamato blocked the attack and immediately retreated. Yamato said that they should let him finish and that he wasn't trying to badmouth Sakura. On the contrary, he was praising him. He explained that he thought Sakura was wasting his talent, which puzzled Tsubakino and the others. Yamato told Sakura that he was being held back by others and that he was much stronger than he was now. He suggested that Sakura would be better off alone, which shocked Nirei and Suwa. Reflecting on his situation, Sakura said that Yamato knew nothing about him. He told Yamato to stop talking nonsense and acting like he knew him. Sakura declared that it didn't matter who said it, only he could decide where he belonged. His friends were encouraged by his words, and Yamato's eyes widened as if he saw a shadow, perhaps remembering someone from Sakura. He laughed and commented that it wasn't so bad after all, pointing out that he didn't come there with the intention of fighting, but he could certainly take them all on. He challenged everyone, and their serious faces showed they were ready for a brawl. Suddenly, Suzuri stepped in and stopped them, which surprised everyone. Sakura yelled that he had nothing to do with this, and Yamato agreed, saying he didn't care about him anymore, so Suzuri should just leave. However, Suzuri insisted that he was very much involved because everything started because of him. He pointed that didn't Yamato come to check on his work, and the issue should be between the two of them, and he couldn't drag others into this mess. Suzuri suddenly groveled and begged Yamato to leave, shocking Sakura and his friends. Yamato approached Suzuri, causing Tsubakino and the others to rush forward, but to their surprise, Yamato burst into laughter, making them stop. Yamato laughed at Suzuri, saying he'd seen people grovel before, but none as impactful as Suzuri. Then, with a serious tone, Yamato asked why Suzuri was doing something so pathetic like begging him. This made Sakura and the others snap, and they charged again, but stopped when Yamato said they would call it even. Yamato explained that the old man who hired him was involved in shady stuff. He just needed to scare him a little, and he'd never try to touch Shizuka again. Kanji, confused, asked what Yamato's aim was and what he was planning. Yamato said he didn't have any real plans. He was just in a good mood that day. Tsubakino commented that Yamato was telling the truth. He'd always been like that. It was impossible to know what he was thinking. Yamato then stood up and said he didn't feel like fighting anymore after laughing so much. He bid farewell, saying he'd find time to visit Furin again to play with them, so they'd see each other when that time came. Sakura, frustrated, chased after him, saying he couldn't leave yet. Before he could get close, Yamato turned and reminded him that he already said they'd meet next time, calling him "little punk" in a frightening and unsettling tone, causing Sakura to stop in his tracks and feel a shiver run down his spine. Tsubakino shouted at Sakura to stop chasing Yamato, and Yamato told him to listen to his senior because he was just a first year. Irritated, Sakura swore in frustration. In the next scene, we return to the present where Sakura is eating furiously out of frustration with Yamato. Nire tried to stop him from eating so fast, but when Sakura glared at him, Nire got scared and backed off. Suddenly, Suzuri apologized to everyone, which made them all look at him. Sakura was puzzled, and Suzuri explained that he felt responsible for Yamato challenging them to a fight. Worse, he hadn't realized that Yamato used to be part of Furin. As he was saying that he didn't know what to say, Sakura interrupted, asking why Suzuri was apologizing. Before Suzuri could explain, Sakura agreed that Yamato showed up because of him, but he didn't care about that. Recalling Yamato's words before he left, Sakura explained that he wasn't angry because Yamato appeared. He was angry at Yamato himself. He told Suzuri to stop apologizing for everything because it was starting to annoy him. Kanji and the others looked at Sakura, and as Sakura grew more irritated thinking about what Yamato had called him, Nire tried to calm him down. Suzuri listened as Tsubakino spoke to him, explaining that it wasn't something Suzuri should worry about and that they chose to fight. When Suzuri was about to argue, Tsubakino stopped him and said the food was getting cold, so he should eat. Suzuri had no choice but to pick up his chopsticks. As he took a bite of the food, it was clear from his expression that he really enjoyed it. His companions were happy for him as he explained that he had never tasted such delicious food in his entire life. Hidaka was pleased and encouraged him to eat more, while Kanji offered him more tasty dishes. Meanwhile, Tsubakino remembered Suzuri's words during their fight. After thinking about this, Tsubakino suddenly asked Suzuri what he was really trying to do, surprising Suzuri. Tsubakino explained that based on what Suzuri had said earlier, it seemed like there was something he truly wanted to do, so he asked what it was. After swallowing his food, Suzuri replied that he liked games, which shocked Tsubakino and the others. Tsubakino asked if he meant games like Othello or playing cards, to which Suzuri explained that he was referring to video games that connect to the TV. Tsubakino thought that if Suzuri wanted to play video games, he would need a television, console, and the software. He explained that they probably couldn't provide all that for him right now, but he also pointed out that he might have old games in his closet that he can give to Suzuri. As Suzuri was about to say that it was okay and that he would save up for it, Hidaka suddenly shouted that he had what Suzuri needed. When they turned to look, Hidaka pulled out some game cartridges and a handheld device, inviting them all to play. In the next scene, they were playing a go-kart game, intensely competing against each other. Before long, Kanji took first place, Shizuka second, Hidaka third, and Suzuri fourth, which made Nirei laugh. Kanji asked Suzuri how he liked the game and if he had any comments on his first game. Suzuri gripped the controller tightly and said that it was a lot of fun, which made Kanji smile. When Kanji asked Tsubakino if he heard that and turned to him, he was taken aback when he saw Tsubakino tearing up while watching Suzuri. Realizing he'd been crying, Tsubakino excused himself to go to the bathroom, and Kanji smiled at him. After that, Kanji told Sakura that it was time to switch players, so Sakura was up next, which surprised him. Shizuka handed the controller to Sakura, and when Suzuri offered to give up his controller, Kanji told him not to be silly and just keep playing. Sakura, irritated, explained that he had never tried this before, so Nirei showed him the basic controls before they started. In the next scene, Sakura was visibly frustrated after losing 10 games in a row, while Nirei, who had 10 consecutive wins, was nervously sitting beside him. Hidaka commented that Suzuri was getting better, while Suwa suggested that Sakura should watch and learn, praising Nirei's skills. Nervously, Nirei told Suwa to be careful with his words because he could see that Sakura was getting angrier, while Suzuri was apologizing on the side. Eventually, Sakura exploded in anger, shouting that they should play another round, scaring Nirei, who quickly handed the controller to Suwa. However, Suwa declined, saying he preferred to watch. Sakura calmed down a bit and insisted they would keep playing until he won, regardless of how many times it took. He declared that he wouldn't let Nirei leave with another victory. Nirei suddenly remembered what Yamato had said to Sakura about being better off alone. Encouraged, he accepted Sakura's challenge and decided to keep playing until Sakura won. Meanwhile, Kanji watched from the sidelines. When Tsubakino returned, Kanji asked if he was okay. Tsubakino replied that he was fine, but he had run out of eyeliner. Kanji clarified that he was asking about Yamato. Tsubakino understood and explained that he had informed Umemiya about what happened. Kanji mentioned that he understood why Yamato wanted to interfere with Furin, but didn't expect Yamato to take an interest in Sakura specifically. Yamato was never the type to give out compliments in the first place, and Tsubakino agreed, pointing out that there was one exception. Then, a silhouette of a person resembling the one Yamato saw in Sakura was shown. Kanji warned Tsubakino to be careful because they didn't know what Yamato might do next. Tsubakino agreed. Suddenly, Tsubakino's phone notified him of a message. After reading it, he called out to Sakura, Nirei, and Suwa, saying he had something he wanted them to do. He asked if they could meet on the school rooftop first thing in the morning. In the next scene, we see Sakura and the others on the rooftop of Furin High, following Tsubakino's instructions. The Four Kings, their subordinates, and Umemiya were also present. Once everyone was gathered, they all sat together at a table to begin their meeting. Let's go back a bit and show what they discussed when Sakura and the others arrived. We see that Hiragi is disappointed because the three friends are there again, but Tsubakino explained that he shouldn't say that because they weren't the ones at fault this time. It was Tsubakino himself. Meanwhile, the other four kings stayed silent. Nirei was extremely nervous while Sakura and Suwa were puzzled as to why there were so many high-ranking people present. Tsubakino explained that after he contacted Umemiya, Umemiya called everyone together and advised them to just sit down for now. Irritated, Sakura sat down immediately, causing Nirei to get angry and ask if that's all he was going to do. Sakura agreed and asked what Nirei wanted him to do. Nervously, Nirei reasoned that all the four kings and their right-hand men being in one place suggested to him that what happened to them yesterday was more significant than they realized. Suddenly, the door to the staircase opened, revealing Umemiya, which startled Nirei. Hiragi and the others commented on why Umemiya was late, each with different reactions. Umemiya thanked Sakura, Suwa, and Nirei for coming early, and after sitting down, started the meeting. Umemiya brought special sandwiches made by Kotoha, along with coffee, and offered them to his subordinates, much to their delight, while Hiragi, as always, was irritated and asked if that was the reason he was late. During this, Nire remained silent, Sakura was puzzled, and Suwa commented that it looked like they were having a picnic. It turned out that Tsujishita was also there, as he handed out cups to everyone. Hiragi thanked Tsujishita for helping him carry things up, but Tsujishita just brushed it off. Nire was shocked to see Tsujishita and offered to help, while Sakura just stared at him and Suwa greeted him with a good morning. Tsujishita was stunned at first but then got angry, so Suwa explained that the look on his face surely meant, "Why are you idiots here?" Irritated, Tsujishita handed cups to Nire and Suwa, but didn't give one to Sakura, who got annoyed when ordered to give him a cup. Nire tried to calm Sakura by giving him his cup. Tsujishita crumpled one of the cups and threw it in front of Sakura. Because of this, Sakura tried to grab Tsujishita, but Nire and Suwa held him back. Matsumoto commented that those two were like oil and water, while Yanagita mentioned that Hiragi had let those two fight when they first met, and Seiryu remarked on the chaos of the first years. Umemiya suddenly told Tsujishita not to be mean and not to waste cups. So, Tsujishita took the crumpled cup, fixed it, and handed it back to Sakura. Sakura just stood there silently, staring at his cup. Umemiya approached Tsujishita, gave him a pat on the shoulder, and smiled at him, saying it was good because now the cup wouldn't be wasted. Hiragi wondered if that was really okay, while Tsubakino felt thrilled, thinking how forgiving Umemiya was. Sakura, however, shouted in anger, questioning how that could be okay. He and Tsujishita locked eyes, and Tsujishita gave him a mocking look, making Sakura even more furious. He challenged Tsujishita to a fight, which made Hiragi yell at them to stop bickering. Exasperated, Hiragi thanked Umemiya for the food, but asked Umemiya to start the meeting. As Umemiya was about to explain what they were going to do, Nire suddenly shouted, asking if it was true that Umemiya wanted them to explain what happened yesterday. Umemiya replied that Tsubakino had already explained it to him, and Kanji had thanked them, even saying they did a good job. Tsubakino also wanted to say something, and immediately thanked the three of them. Nire and Suwa brushed it off, while Sakura silently blushed as always. Nire then asked if they weren't there to explain, why did Umemiya call them there? The room fell silent, and everyone exchanged glances. Umemiya then asked Sakura how he felt when he met Yamato. Sakura, Nire, and Suwa were surprised, and Sakura asked what Umemiya was trying to ask, saying that Yamato was just an asshole. Umemiya laughed, and explained that he heard from Tsubakino that Yamato was interested in Sakura. So, he thought Sakura should know more about who Yamato really was. But to do that, he needed to start the story from when Boforin was first established. That's why he had called the Four Kings and their subordinates. The 3 first years were puzzled, and Nire asked if they were going to talk about how Umemiya and the top members of the school united everyone in Foreign to create Boforin. The 4 kings looked at each other silently, and Umemiya agreed, saying that was the gist of it. However, he explained that what he wanted to discuss were the people they had left behind when they first established Boforin. It was about those who had stayed in the shadows. Umemiya called on Nire, who promptly responded. Umemiya then asked him how much information he knew about Boforin. Without delay, Nire began to explain. He recounted that 2 years ago, on April 7th, 5 students with similar aspirations enrolled in the infamous delinquent school, Foreign High. At that time, Foreign was a dog-eat-dog school where students were divided into factions that fought to reach the top. Additionally, the students would also get into fights with other schools and teams, making it the epitome of chaos. But when these 5 students enrolled together, they challenged the major factions of Foreign and took them down one by one. Nire excitedly explained that repeatedly, they punched and struck, crashing through everyone like a surging wave, reaching the top. No one, not even the 2nd and 3rd years, could defeat them. It was incredibly easy for them. After defeating their enemies, they made them allies and spread their influence throughout the school, causing the frequent fights to gradually disappear. Within a year, they accomplished a miracle that no one had achieved before. They unified all of Furin. Then, the students who made this reality possible decided to protect the town together under the name Bofurin, and that was how it ended. That was how the curtain closed on the volume of Bofurin's story, Nirei concluded. Everyone was in awe of how he recounted the story, with Suwa commenting that it felt like listening to Rakugo and Tsubakino inviting him to perform on stage with him. Blushing, Nirei gratefully accepted the compliments. Umemiya then thanked Nirei, agreeing that this was indeed how Bofurin came to be. Hiragi, however, seemed puzzled and looked visibly agitated. Umemiya asked what was wrong. Hiragi shouted not to be foolish and that it wasn't that simple. Tsubakino commented that this was just how Umemiya was. He didn't dwell on the past and only looked forward. Hiragi responded that Tsubakino was spoiling Umemiya too much. Nirei quickly took out his handbook, thinking he might learn something valuable from this, prompting Suwa to ask where his nervousness had gone. Hiragi irritably asked if Umemiya had forgotten how he let him fight 30 people while he went one-on-one with other leaders. Tsubakino added that he often got surrounded by their seniors, but Umemiya always praised him afterward, so it was worth it. Umemiya just laughed and asked if those things really happened, which annoyed Hiragi even more, prompting him to challenge Umemiya to step outside. Umemiya suddenly expressed his gratitude for everything they had done, making Tsubakino happy as he said he had no regrets. Nirei diligently wrote down everything he heard, agreeing that Umemiya was the type to look toward the future, and Suwa commented that Tsubakino would do anything Umemiya asked. Then, the head of the Komoku team, Saka Mizuki, spoke up, stating that Nirei's story was nothing more than an exaggeration of the facts, catching everyone's attention. Mizuki explained that every change comes with hardship, to which Hiragi sarcastically remarked that Mizuki had the nerve to speak, considering he always lost his composure when his glasses broke. Mizuki retorted that it was a different matter when it came to his glasses. Takumi Momose, the head of the Zojo team, cheerfully declared his support for Umemiya, saying all he remembered was drawing. Tsubakino commented that Takumi could indeed draw anywhere. Matsumoto acknowledged that a lot had happened, but it was fun, while Yanagita noted that Matsumoto was always like that. Seiryu mentioned that he understood Hiragi's perspective, and Suwa remarked that they must have gone through a lot. Sakura, exasperated, asked where in their story the part about the shadows that Umemiya mentioned was. Nirei immediately spoke up, asking Umemiya if the shadows referred to Yamato. Sakura was surprised, and Umemiya confirmed it, but with a caveat. Umemiya then asked how much Nirei knew about Yamato. After some thought, Nirei explained that anyone who wanted to be part of Furin knew about Yamato. He said Yamato was a legend, reminding Sakura of the reactions when they first saw Yamato. Nirei continued, saying Yamato was just like Umemiya and his team, a first year who formed a faction of aggressive fighters undefeated by second or third years. However, unlike Umemiya, who befriended enemies and expanded their influence, Yamato prioritized keeping his team small and strong. Yamato didn't stop at Furin. He went out and crushed other teams. Nirei heard that whenever Yamato and his group finished fighting, the place was left like a burned wasteland. He added that it was rumored that getting Yamato's attention meant your end. Everyone turned to look at Sakura, who was seriously irritated by this. Because of that, Nirei said, Yamato was the last obstacle to unifying all of Furin. But despite that, the heroes succeeded against that legend. And so, in the end, Furin was unified. After Nirei finished his story, Sakura looked at him, puzzled. Nirei added that Yamato was different from other factions because he didn't pledge to Furin. Instead, he left. Everyone stared at Nirei, and he asked if that was why Yamato was considered the shadow. Sakura, puzzled, asked how that made Yamato a shadow. Nirei explained that he meant Yamato rejected Furin after their school was unified. If he left, It probably meant he disagreed with what Umemiya and the other leaders wanted. Because his way of thinking was different, he might have seen Umemiya as the enemy, which could mean he held a grudge against Furin, making him the shadow of their legacy. Irritated, Sakura said that Yamato was just annoyed because he saw things differently and accused Nirei of making excuses. Umemiya then contradicted Sakura and Nirei, saying that it wasn't exactly like that, surprising Sakura, Nirei, and Suwa. Umemiya stated there were two mistakes in Nirei's explanation, making Nirei ask which parts. Umemiya explained that first, Yamato and his team were not motivated by a grudge. Because of that, based on what he had heard from them, it seemed Yamato's interest in Furin had been rekindled. Nirei, recalling Yamato's words that he would go to Furin, tried to look on the bright side, saying it didn't matter if he came since Umemiya had defeated him before. He was sure that even now, they would be fine. Nirei asked if he was right, but Umemiya pointed out that this was the second mistake. Umemiya explained that Yamato and his team didn't reject Furin after they unified the school. They left Furin themselves, and it happened before the school was unified. Sakura, Suwa, and Nirei were shocked. Sakura asked if they hadn't unified Furin within a year. Nirei added that if it happened before that, it could only mean one thing. Umemiya clarified that it meant they had never defeated Yamato and his team. Due to that, Nirei nervously asked what Umemiya meant by saying they had never defeated Yamato. So Umemiya looked at him and explained that, as they all knew, they united Furin, many new allies joined them, and they made it their purpose to protect the town. However, Yamato and his group wanted to turn back Furin's time to when everyone fought for the top, causing chaos and destruction. They had fought against Yamato's group many times, but each time it felt like a desperate struggle. Despite all that, they never had a clear winner or loser. While that was happening, they continued fighting other factions, and because of that, they gained many more allies. That's when Furin began to change. Finally, Furin found order. And in response to that, Yamato and his men lost interest in a proper, orderly Furin. That's when they voluntarily left, bearing the chaos and violence of the past Furin. Nirei added that this is why Yamato and his group are called the shadows that were left behind. Umemiya agreed and explained that those shadows are once again encroaching upon Furin. He didn't know the exact reason why, but the worst case might be that they are trying to change Furin back to how it was before. Nirei's face showed fear, while Suwa, Tsujishida, and the others remained silent. Just as Nirei was about to speak, Sakura arrogantly laughed and said if that's what Yamato and his group wanted, then let them bring it on. Everyone around him turned to look at him. He said if they're willing to waltz into Furin, that saves them the time of looking for them. Nirei tried to caution him, but Sakura asked if they were scared, irritating Tsujishida, who was about to react, but Umemiya stopped him. Sakura added that their job is simple. It doesn't matter who comes for them. All they have to do is send them flying. He remembered his dream of becoming the best of the best at brawling and thought about how he said those words. As he recalled the things that made him realize life was more than he initially thought, he added that all of them are protecting things important to them, like people, things, and memories. Sakura slammed the table and shouted, "Wasn't that the reason why they exist? Why Furin exists?" Nirei and Suwa's eyes widened, while Tsujishida looked at him seriously. Umemiya also realized something, recalling his conversation with Kotoha, who told him that Sakura came to their town because he had heard about the old Furin. Sakura told her that he belonged in a chaotic and violent life, but Kotoha didn't think that was truly the case. Umemiya understood this back then and hoped that he and Sakura would become friends. Returning to the present, Umemiya suddenly laughed out loud, causing an irritated Sakura to blush and ask what the problem was. Umemiya told him that he was glad he came to their town, making him blush even more and bringing smiles to the four kings. After that, Umemiya said he hoped that when the time came, Sakura would take care of Yamato. Yamato generally didn't like people, but if he found someone he liked, he would target them, so Sakura should be prepared for anything. Sakura grinned and arrogantly said, "Sure, but don't blame me if I steal your target," to which Umemiya replied that he wouldn't do that. Moreover, Umemiya added that Yamato wasn't interested in him. In fact, when Yamato was still at Furin, they had never fought each other, which surprised Nire, Sakura, and Suwa. Nire asked if they hadn't fought Yamato and his crew before, and Umemiya clarified that they had indeed fought Yamato and his group, but there was another legend besides Yamato. Sakura found it strange, and Suwa commented that he had never heard about it, and even Nire didn't know. Nire asked if that meant there was another person like Yamato. Umemiya shook his head and pointed out that the person he was referring to was much stronger than Yamato, which shocked Nire even more. He said that the person he was talking about was the only one he had never won against. Nire, terrified, asked how such a person could exist and who that man was. Umemiya then told them that his name was Chika Takeshi, and he was probably the strongest person in Furin's history. In the next scene, we moved to a city where we saw Yamato walking with some groceries. When he looked into an alley, he was shocked and then started laughing. We saw several men lying on the ground, and Yamato asked what had happened there. He exclaimed, "Sheesh," and it turned out that Takeshi, the man Umemiya mentioned as the strongest in Furin's history, had beaten up the men. Takeshi explained to Yamato that he had wanted to set off fireworks, but those men had taken his spot before he arrived. Yamato stared at him and agreed, saying they were to blame. But then he asked why Takeshi had piled them up like that, pointing out that wouldn't it be better to launch fireworks as high as possible. Takeshi lit the fireworks, impressing Yamato with the display. Takeshi then commented that the result was acceptable, but had hoped the fireworks would reach higher. Finally, Takeshi's appearance was revealed, and he remarked that he would need to build a higher mound to make his fireworks fly even higher. In the next scene, Sakura is shown fighting with Hiragi, highlighting the intensity of their battle. Hiragi manages to push Sakura back, irritating him. When Sakura attempts to counterattack, Hiragi easily dodges and follows up with a kick, forcing Sakura to tumble backward. Hiragi then challenges Sakura to attack him again, further irritating him. It becomes clear that the first-year students are sparring with their seniors, seemingly as part of their training. Soon, their sparring matches end, and Tsujiura excitedly shouts that he can feel his muscles singing with joy. Kiryu, visibly exhausted, comments that he isn't as enthusiastic as Tsujiura and complains about the intense heat, making him sweat profusely. Suwa remarks that the rainy season is approaching, causing the weather to be humid. This irritates Kiryu, who feels that Suwa isn't struggling like the rest of them and tells him to stop acting cool. Nire then approaches them, praising their performance and bringing sports drinks and barley tea to keep them hydrated. They appreciate Nire's gesture, mentioning their thirst, and Suwa invites him to join their training later, to which Nire agrees. Noticing Sujishida's absence, Nire learns from Tsujiura that he was seen on the stairs earlier, and Kiryu speculates that he might be looking for Umemiya. Understanding this, Nire shifts the topic to Sakura, noting how pumped up he seems. Kiryu agrees, suggesting it's because Sakura might face Yamato soon and should be prepared. Tsujiura comments on the surprising backstory they learned about Bo Furin, noting how a twist of fate could lead them to battle several legends. Kiryu adds that this is why Bo Furin is on high alert, with more frequent patrols and non-stop training sessions with their seniors. As a result, everyone is on edge. Kiryu also mentions missing his quiet time to play games and not getting his login bonuses. Nire offers to log in for him, which Kiryu gratefully accepts. Tsujiura suddenly shouts that Kiryu also needs to get hyped, expressing how pumped he feels about such events. Kiryu points out that Tsujiura is always like that, to which Tsujiura agrees, calling it his virtue. Then, a voice from the side comments on Sakura, drawing the first year's attention. Inomoto remarks that Sakura seems to attract a lot of trouble, wondering if he emits an aura that draws chaos. A dry voice responds, saying that Sakura doesn't attract trouble, Instead, he always charges into it first. Inomoto turns to see Enzai, Takanashi, Kurita, and Kakeuchi looking exhausted and parched. After drinking the sports drinks and barley tea that Nire brought, they recover, and Enzai comments on the difficulty of their training. Inomoto immediately asked Enzai what he was talking about earlier. Enzai explained that even if Sakura sees someone in need of help from a distance, he acts immediately to assist them. In his opinion, this is why Sakura often gets involved in a lot of trouble. But overall, this means that Sakura is a good guy. Inomoto smiled and said that nothing would change Sakura's nature, and even Nire, Suwa, Tsujira, and Kiryu smiled at what they heard. Suddenly, they heard Hiragi shouting for them to stop. They turned to see that Hiragi was calling off the sparring session with Sakura, telling him to rest. However, Sakura refused to stop, saying that no one knows when Yamato will attack, so they can't afford to waste any time. Hiragi argued that Sakura was overdoing the training and that there would be no point if he was too exhausted to move when Yamato arrived. Nevertheless, Hiragi admitted that he couldn't blame Sakura for his impatience, given that he would be facing Yamato himself. Sakura clenched his fist and said that his desire had nothing to do with Yamato, which puzzled Hiragi. Sakura explained that it didn't matter who he would be fighting because he had decided not to let anyone hurt his friends. His friends stared at him, and he added that he wasn't naive enough to believe he could save everyone alone, but if he could become a little stronger, he could save more people. He didn't know when or if Yamato would come, but he wanted to avoid any regrets when it happened. That's why it wasn't the time to stand still. As Hiragi was about to agree to spar with Sakura again, Kaji stepped in, saying he would be the one to fight Sakura. Sakura had said not to just stand there and that he wanted to get stronger, so they should start immediately. This energized the other first years, who then challenged their second-year counterparts to spar with them again. They told Sakura not to underestimate them by thinking they needed protection and not to make them look weak. They said that while Sakura might be hopeless, since he would protect others, it was up to them to back him up. In the next scene, at Tanpu Market Street in town, some foreign students were patrolling, reminding shopkeepers to call them if they had any problems. One student asked his companion if he had finished talking to the people. The companion said he had only one street left to cover, and then they would be done. As they discussed hurrying up, they noticed another guy in a foreign uniform passing by, catching their attention. One commented that he was quite tall for a first year, but another student paused and said that he didn't recognize him. In the next scene, the following day, we head to Foreign High, where a uniform is pinned to the entrance along with a piece of paper that reads Declaration of War. After that, we move to the town, where we see Sakura. As he walks, he's irritated because he got hit during his sparring match with Kaji. It turns out that Kaji didn't hold back, which led to a heated exchange between them. However, Hiragi quickly put a stop to it by hitting both of them, and the altercation ended. Suddenly, someone called out to him. It was Nire, Suwa, Tsujira, and Kiryu, who greeted him with a good morning. Nire asked him how his injury was, to which he replied that it was fine. Suwa commented that looking black and blue was a sign of his hard work, but Kiryu added that it didn't seem like Suwa was putting in much effort, while Tsujira enthusiastically mentioned how dedicated he was the previous day. Tsujira suddenly remembered something and invited them to muscle power after their classes, to which Nire agreed, while Sakura, Suwa, and Kiryu declined. Tsujira stared at them and said they wouldn't get stronger if they didn't eat a proper meal, and Nire agreed with him. Sakura reassured him that he would eat. Suwa added that it mattered where they ate, and Kiryu mentioned he wanted manya. Someone nearby commented that manya wasn't a proper meal but a snack, which made them all turn to look. It turned out to be Enzai and his three best friends, who also greeted them good morning. Since they were talking about manya, Enzai recalled that the lady who hosted them at the Manjiaki restaurant wanted them to visit again. When Nire asked if he had gone back recently, Enzai confirmed and said he went with Nagato and Tsuchiya. This caught Sakura's attention, and Enzai asked if he remembered them, to which Sakura blushed and replied that of course he did. Onii mentioned that they always ate together, and whenever they did, they always talked about Sakura. Blushing even more, Sakura told them not to talk about him behind his back. Just then, a woman they had rescued from a group of men called out to them, and they immediately recognized her. The woman thanked them again, which Kiryu brushed off, while Kurita intensely asked who she was. Suwa explained that they had met her a while ago. Kiryu asked if she lived nearby, and she confirmed, saying she wanted to thank them whenever she had the chance, so she always carried something with her. She showed them some bags of candy and gave them as a token of appreciation. They were all delighted, while Sakura, as usual, had a different reaction, prompting Suwa to ask if he wasn't happy, to which Sakura just blushed. Suddenly, another person called out to them, startling Sakura. It was a shopkeeper calling for Nire. Suwa asked if he knew her, and Nire confirmed. The woman explained that she was surrounded by weirdos the other day, and Nire had saved her, though Nire shyly admitted that it was actually Sakura who had rescued her. Suwa smiled while Sakura blushed even more, and their crazy group of friends grinned from behind. Not long after, people from the town began approaching them, and it was here that we learned the name of the woman Kiryu and the others saved, and her name is Ayaka. Sakura didn't know what to do with all the gratitude coming their way, and they were suddenly bombarded with gifts from the townspeople, so they had no choice but to accept all of them. Everyone with Sakura was overjoyed, while he was utterly bewildered by the situation. With the abundance of gifts they received, Tsujira decided to reschedule their trip to Muscle Power. Kiryu was also happy for many reasons, and he said it was all thanks to Sakura, so they thanked him. They didn't expect anything more from someone who rushes headfirst into trouble, so Onii was surprised by this. Sakura was puzzled, but he suddenly irritably asked what they meant, wondering if they were teasing him. Suwa tried to explain but was quickly silenced by Onii. Onii, now nervous, asked why Suwa had to say that, leading Suwa to question if he shouldn't have. Meanwhile, Tsujira remarked that Sakura would surely like it. As his group walked on, Sakura paused, recalling Hiragi's realization about how he didn't see joy in things unless he was fighting. Hiragi had explained to him that it was also enjoyable to talk to people and be needed by them, and upon remembering this, Sakura smiled at the idea. Suddenly, Nire commented that when life seems as peaceful as it is now, it's easy to forget that a war could break out soon. In the next scene, as they entered Foreign, they saw the students there looking worried while talking among themselves. Suddenly, some students started running frantically down the hallway, prompting Nire to ask what was going on. Upon entering their classroom, a student, who couldn't believe what was happening, immediately told Sakura and the others that things were bad and that something had caused a lot of trouble. Just then, their announcement speaker sounded, and Umemiya shouted a good morning, which once again hurt their eardrums. He reminded them that it wasn't very hot today, but urged them to stay hydrated. Sakura was annoyed by Umemiya's use of the announcement speaker and thought he should stop doing that. Soon after, Umemiya explained that he would get straight to the point. He seriously announced that all grade captains and their vice captains needed to go to the rooftop immediately. This caught the attention of Sakura, Suwa, and Nire, and Sakura quickly realized what was happening. He glanced at Suwa and Nire, and the three of them ran out. Before leaving the room, a classmate who had called Sakura earlier called out to him and said that the people upstairs would tell him what he needed to hear. Sakura nodded in response. In the next scene, we move to the rooftop, where the other captains were already talking, discussing that the time had come. When Sakura and his group arrived, Nire commented on how tense the atmosphere was, and Suwa added that it felt very different from the first time they all gathered there. Not long after, the perpetually late Umemiya arrived with the four kings and their subordinates, and he apologized for summoning them there. The captains and vice captains quickly got in order, and Umemiya began to explain the reason for calling them all there, saying he thought they already knew. They had received a declaration of war from Yamato. The expressions of everyone there turned serious, and he added that in 2 weeks, Yamato and his team would return to that town to destroy Foreign. In the next scene, we move to a moment where a young boy is asking his mother if the baby she is expecting is a boy or a girl. The mother tells the boy that they don't know yet. It turns out that this boy is Umemiya when his mother calls his name and asks what he thinks. Umemiya responds that he doesn't know. However, he often sees in movies and books that older brothers protect their younger siblings, and he thinks that's cool, so he says he'll do the same and protect his siblings. The mood of the story suddenly changes as we shift to a gruesome scene where Umemiya is lying on the ground, covered in blood, and sees his mother get hit by a truck. This is where we begin the hidden past of Foreign's representative, Hajime Umemiya. After that, we move to a scene where 9-year-old Umemiya doesn't want to eat, leaving the other kids around him puzzled. Another kid volunteers to eat it if Umemiya doesn't want it, but someone quickly stops him. It turns out that Umemiya is now in foster care, and their caregiver is Yuki Shitara, a middle-aged man. Shitara asks Umemiya if he doesn't like omelet rice and if he wants something else. Someone there also says they want to know. For Shitara, you can never go wrong with beer and karage, which leaves the kids speechless as to why he's telling them his preferences when they really want to know about Umemiya's. Umemiya remains silent and soon gives his food to a chubby kid because he can't taste it anyway. The kids wonder why he can't taste it, thinking the food might be that bland. Umemiya stands up and tells them it's better if they stay away from him because he's a murderer. The kids are even more puzzled, and Shitara watches him leave the table. To avoid drawing too much attention to the situation, Shitara quickly grabs the kids' attention and invites them to play a card game after they finish eating. Later that night, Shitara talks to a colleague in the staff room, mentioning that Umemiya didn't eat again, and he thought maybe he didn't like the omelet rice. It turns out that Umemiya has been in an orphanage since the incident we saw earlier. The female staff member explains that it's been a month since Umemiya arrived, but he still hasn't had a proper conversation or meal. She wonders if Umemiya will be okay. Shitara, while grabbing a beer from the fridge, explains that they can't blame him given what he's been through. His colleague stops him from drinking, but he says it's like his medicine. Shitara explains that Umemiya lost his parents and sibling all at once and has no relatives. He's alone in the world at a very young age. He adds that Umemiya's hair color is slowly changing, and after being passed around different facilities, he ended up with them. Recalling Umemiya's claim that he's a murderer, Shitara mentions that the boy has a lot of problems for someone his age, and their worries can't be eased even by drinking. In the next scene, Shitara invites the kids to play dodgeball, and they eagerly join him. But just as they are about to go outside, Shitara stops them, saying they will play inside the house. The kids are irritated because he never lets them play outside, but Shitara tells them not to blame him but to blame the older kids who caused trouble. However, he understands why the kids don't want to play inside, even though he made pudding for all of them. Using this bribe, the kids quickly agree to play inside. His female staff colleague comments that the kids are right. Such things often happen nowadays. She explained that the Market Street vendors told her that their storefronts were repeatedly vandalized despite their efforts to repair and clean them. She said the entire town was in chaos. She added that there were too many issues like that cropping up, and it was clear that the police were no longer paying attention to them. This infuriated her, and she began to hate it. She claimed that the root of these problems was the students at Foreign High. She explained that they not only fought among themselves but also caused trouble and picked fights with other groups. They didn't care where or how, leaving a mess wherever they went. Everything was in disarray because of them. They even boasted about being a notorious school of delinquents, and she just wanted them to leave and stop causing trouble. Shitara suddenly commented that it hurt, indicating that he might have been a former foreign student. The woman clarified that he wasn't being referred to. Shitara agreed and explained that, nonetheless, they weren't like that before. They used to be more well-behaved. Shitara scratched his head and wished they would stop their antics. The woman stared at him and immediately told him not to show that face to the children, to which he responded by asking if he didn't look cool. During this exchange, it turned out that Umemiya was listening, and he suddenly left their house. In the next scene, we see the town in great turmoil, with many men fighting. Soon, a group had defeated their opponents and were laughing at a man getting beaten up. While walking, they suddenly noticed Umemiya, wondering why a child was there. One of the men teased Umemiya, speaking in baby talk, and asked where his mommy was. Unexpectedly, Umemiya punched the man in the stomach, causing his friends to laugh at him for getting a kid mad. The man, surprised, kicked Umemiya hard, sending him flying into a wall. His friends tried to calm him down, saying it was just a child, but the man looked seriously hurt by Umemiya's punch. The man couldn't believe how strong the boy's punch was, saying it was stronger than the men they had beaten up. Umemiya tried to stand up and laughed, which made the man nervous. He kicked Umemiya in the face hard, and soon, the man began to stomp on him, causing his friends to worry that it was too much for a child. When Umemiya stopped moving while lying on the ground, the man paused. But when he looked at Umemiya again, he felt a strange fear and tried to stomp on him again. Suddenly, another man arrived and kicked the man trying to stomp on Umemiya, sending him flying into his friends. The men were shocked and immediately noticed that the newcomer was from foreign. The foreign student commented that if they spread out like that on a narrow street, how did they expect people to pass through? In the next scene, the foreign student managed to beat up all the men there. Hungry, he decided to look for food, and Umemiya suddenly commented on what the man had done. The foreign student turned to him and said that it was his fault he wasn't dead. The man stared at Umemiya and asked if he had intentionally provoked the men earlier. He asked if Umemiya was trying to kill himself, to which Umemiya explained that he needed to atone for what he had done. We are shown a flashback of the accident and why Umemiya blamed himself for what happened. It turned out that he had made his parents wait while he looked at action figures when a truck suddenly hit them. He believed it happened because he was selfish. The foreign student commented that he understood and said that if that was the case, then Umemiya should just die, causing Umemiya's eyes to widen. They went to the top of a building, and the foreign student told him that if he wanted to die, he should kill himself. He shouldn't dirty anyone else's hands. Instead of stopping him, the man even encouraged him to jump. When Umemiya reached the edge of the building, he looked down and thought the man was right. All he needed to do was jump, and it would all be over. As he considered his action, he noticed his hand trembling as he held onto the railing. That's when he realized he was scared. He told himself not to be foolish, thinking he had no right to be afraid because he believed he was responsible for everything that happened. That's why he wanted to fall into hell and be punished. He felt he needed to go somewhere where there were no other people. As he recalled what happened before, his mom, dad, and expected younger sibling disappeared, he deeply apologized to them. He lifted one foot, preparing to fall, but when he remembered the exact moment he lost his parents, he saw their faces, looking relieved that he was safe. Because of that, he came to his senses. However, it was too late. His balance was already off. He screamed, not wanting it to happen. Suddenly, the foreign student grabbed his hand and threw him back onto the rooftop. After that, the fear and anxiety were clear on Umemiya's face. He even vomited from the intensity of the experience. The man said that when he heard Umemiya scream, "No," he knew that was what Umemiya truly felt. Fear and dread were evident on Umemiya's face as the man continued explaining. The man said he didn't know what had happened to Umemiya or if he even cared, but no matter how bad reality gets, it keeps pushing you irrationally and unreasonably. Despite that, Umemiya chose to live, so he needed to prepare himself. He said it would only get tougher from here on out, so if Umemiya didn't like it, he had no choice but to become stronger so he wouldn't give in. He pointed out that talking about possibilities wasn't going to change anything. Not long after, due to everything he had gone through that day, Umemiya lost consciousness. As he blacked out, He remembered that the reason he was alive was that his parents had saved him, and they were happy that they had managed to push him out of the dangerous situation. When he regained consciousness, he found himself being carried by Shitara, and he was surprised by this. Shitara commented that it's good that he woke up, and he called him a little delinquent. When Umemiya was about to ask why he was there, he was immediately shouted at, questioning why he was even asking, saying it was because he just got up and disappeared from the foster home. When they found out he left the orphanage, they searched for him non-stop, like headless chickens. Shitara was irritated with him and said he would get a severe scolding when they returned. Umemiya remembered what happened to him earlier, so he informed Shitara that he had company earlier, which Shitara already knew, so he told him not to worry. He was puzzled by that, and Shitara added that the most important thing was that he was safe, giving him a cheerful smile. Umemiya's eyes widened, and he immediately pressed his face against Shitara's back. While walking, Umemiya suddenly mentioned that they were both smiling, which made Shitara wonder who he was referring to. Umemiya explained that he remembered that on the day of the accident, his parents pushed him away, and because of that, they were the ones hit by the truck. He said it was his fault that it happened to them, but in his parents' final moments, he saw them smiling. Umemiya tightened his grip on Shitara and began to cry while asking why they were smiling. Shitara explained that there was only one answer to his question. They were happy they managed to save him. Umemiya's eyes widened, and he asked if it was true that they didn't hate him even though he was the cause of everything that happened. Shitara explained that if they did, they wouldn't have smiled at him. Shitara said he had seen many types of parents, and he could say that not all parents could smile while rushing to protect their children. He said what happened was amazing and unbelievable, and Umemiya's mom and dad were truly remarkable. From that alone, Umemiya could see how much they loved him. Umemiya was left speechless and thought that he believed he shouldn't think about such things. He thought it was something he could never do. Almost crying, Umemiya asked Shitara if it was true that they weren't angry and didn't hate him. Could he miss them? He asked if he could feel lonely. Shitara smiled at that and immediately said, "Of course." Because of that, while remembering the happy memories with his parents, Umemiya just broke down and cried, shouting "Mommy" and "Daddy." He tightened his embrace on Shitara, where Shitara felt relieved that Umemiya had finally cried, and they continued their walk back home to the foster home. In the next scene, we delve into a happy memory of Umemiya, where he is eating omelet rice with his parents. They explain to him that when he eats dinner, he should try to do it with the whole family because that's the Umemiya family way, their unique rule. Umemiya, puzzled, asks why. His mom and dad smile and say that eating together makes the food taste better. After that, we return to the present, where Shitara and Umemiya have returned, and the other children, worried about Umemiya, ask where he went and if he's okay. Shitara shoos them away, saying they're crowding them, and the female staff member with Shitara yells in relief when she sees Umemiya. Umemiya apologizes to them, and the other children and the female staff smile at him. Soon, Shitara invites everyone to dinner, and they cheer. Shitara thinks about what to prepare and decides to make Umemiya's favorite dish. The other kids, excited, ask what Umemiya's favorite dish is. Shitara realizes something and whispers to the woman beside him not to mention anything expensive like foie gras or caviar, to which she agrees, saying she's not like him. Some kids happily guess that Umemiya's favorite might be hamburger steak or gratin, but soon, Umemiya speaks up, catching everyone's attention. He says he wants omelet rice, surprising Shitara, but then a smile spreads on his face. Shitara promises to make the best omelet rice, but first, he asks Umemiya to take a bath while the other kids help him cook. After his bath, Umemiya sits down with the kids, and Shitara serves the omelet rice. They all thank for the food before starting to eat. Their faces light up with enjoyment as they eat, and Umemiya thinks to himself how happy everyone looks. He looks at his omelet rice, but just as he's about to reach for the spork, he remembers his parents and stops, thinking he can't do it. Whenever he thinks of his parents, he can't stop himself from feeling sad. He feels overwhelming sadness and calls out to his parents. His companions turn to look at him, and one of the girls comments that they are in the same situation. She says that when she first came to the foster home, everything tasted bland. When she heard that she wouldn't see her mom again, she felt incredibly lonely. But as she spent more time with everyone there, she finally started to taste the flavors in food again. It was because everyone there became her family. Umemiya wonders what she means by family, so the girl explains that they were always there for her, to talk to her, and they understood her loneliness, saw her for who she really was, and made her feel important. Eventually, she grew to love them too, and they became important to her. She just wanted to care for them as they had cared for her. Her sensei taught her that as long as they faced each other and were important to each other, it didn't matter if they were blood-related. They were still a family. So, she wanted Umemiya to be part of their family too. She said that not only she but everyone would face Umemiya and cherish him just as they did for her. Umemiya stared, and we continued to see his memory of eating with his parents, where they told him that eating together as a family made the food taste better. While chewing his food, Umemiya was puzzled and pointed out that their food always tasted good, to which his mom was delighted. His mom explained that if he enjoyed the flavors and could taste how delicious the food was, it meant his heart was full of love. He stared at her, and his mom said that his heart was like a bucket. His dad added that when that bucket was filled with energy, it would reach its maximum capacity. If a person's heart wasn't full, they couldn't taste how good their food was. That's why his parents were happy, because he enjoyed the food. However, his energy would decrease when he was sad, so he needed to recharge when it was depleted. Umemiya asked how he could do that, and his parents said it was simple. All he needed to do was spend time with the people he loved. That was why his mom and dad wanted to eat together as a family. When he gave time to those who mattered to him, his heart would be filled. And when his heart was full, the food would taste better. And if his food tasted better, he would gain the strength to overcome his difficulties. And that wasn't limited to eating with them. They assured him that in the future, he would find many people like that in his life. While sitting at the dining table, Umemiya wondered why his heart felt warmer. After the girl spoke, she worried that her words might have come off differently to Umemiya, so she tried to explain that she wasn't forcing him to face them. Umemiya brushed it off, saying it was okay, and thanked them. He managed to hold his spork and took a bite of his omelet rice. After tasting it, he thought about how sweet their ketchup was, and soon, he smiled warmly, saying it was delicious. His companions were delighted and immediately offered him their portions if he wanted more. Umemiya was overwhelmed by the number of offers, saying he didn't need that much food. Suddenly, someone called him Onii-Chan, catching his attention, and he turned to them. The two kids explained that they were younger than him, so he was their Onii-Chan. He once wondered if he would ever get the chance to be an older brother, but now that his wish had come true, he resolved never to fail again and to protect them all as their big brother. Umemiya picked up his fallen spork, tears welling up as he remembered, and immediately declared that if he was their big brother, he needed to get himself together because he was going to be their Onii-Chan. His companions were puzzled by his reaction, and he quickly urged them to eat, but Shitara stopped him from using the dropped spork, instructing him to wash it first, which he did. In the next scene, we transition to a bright morning where Umemiya comments on how delicious his breakfast was and confidently states that it would be a great day. After stretching, he shouted that it was time, revealing that we had jumped 5 years ahead, with Umemiya now 14 years old and seemingly heading to school in his uniform. The foster kids also came out, saying their goodbyes as they headed to school. Umemiya cheerfully told them that he would see them later. He asked if they had finished their homework and if they had their handkerchiefs with them, to which they all responded affirmatively. One of the kids commented that Umemiya seemed happier than usual, making him a bit shy as he admitted it was noticeable. He explained that it was an important day for him because he would finally be able to do something he had long wanted to do. Soon, the kids' friends arrived, and they were invited to walk together, so Umemiya bid them farewell. As he declared it was time to leave, Shitara, amused, commented that Umemiya still hadn't changed his long-standing goal. Umemiya turned to him with a smile, explaining that meeting Shitara and the guy from Furin was truly an act of fate, and he was certain that his journey to Furin now was also destined. After saying goodbye to Shitara, who told him to take care, Umemiya walked away. Shitara recalled the man Umemiya mentioned, and we flash back to a time when Shitara was searching for Umemiya after he left the foster home. While looking, Shitara encountered the man from Furin carrying Umemiya on his back, and the man called Shitara Sensei. Irritated, Shitara asked the man what he had done to Umemiya, seeing him beaten up, to which the man replied that Umemiya had sought trouble with delinquents and that he himself didn't enjoy beating up kids. Shitara apologized for his earlier reaction and acknowledged that the man had helped Umemiya. The man handed Umemiya over to Shitara, saying he had saved time since he had planned to bring him to their home. Curious, Shitara asked if the man knew Umemiya was from an orphanage. The man said no, but thought Shitara might be able to help the boy. Shitara, staring at the man, scratched his head, explaining that he didn't work like an odd jobs contractor. Nevertheless, he was happy to know the man thought of him as a reliable adult for solving problems. The man smiled, and they began walking together. Shitara remarked how time flew and asked how long it had been since the man left the orphanage, to which the man replied that it had been 8 years and explained he had stayed there for only half a year. As they passed a street with an alley, the man went his separate way, and Shitara thanked him again and invited him to visit the orphanage, to which the man said he would visit when he felt like it. Shitara observed the surroundings and asked the man if he had entered Furin because he wanted to become stronger. The man agreed, explaining it was similar to someone they both knew. Next, Shitara asked if what he and his friends were doing now was something strong people would do. The man answered that they just couldn't sit still while outsiders were doing whatever they wanted on their turf. He added that unlike the past, new teams and gangs were popping up all over the place, so if they were careless, the other gangs would grow huge and powerful quickly. So, what did Shitara expect them to do? Just let those guys roam around doing whatever they wanted in their territory? The man pointed out that times are changing, and it's not like their generation where they only needed to fight those guys in school. After that, the man changed the topic and told Shitara that he should focus on his job and take good care of the kids, especially Umemiya, because he is very brave and seems to be going through a lot. He told Shitara to keep his focus on Umemiya, just like Shitara had done for him. After that, we return to the present, and as Shitara watched Umemiya leave with his classmates, he remarked that Umemiya wasn't just brave, he was also an amazing kid. In the next scene, in town, a woman was carrying goods from her car and lost her balance, but fortunately, Umemiya arrived in time to help her with some of the items she was carrying. Umemiya asked if he should put them in the usual spot, to which the woman agreed and asked if he was on his way home, and he confirmed that he was. Another woman thanked him for all the help he had given and offered him some taiyaki, to which Umemiya was delighted. It turns out that Umemiya is well known in the town because he always helps people, and in return, they always show their gratitude and give him gifts. While Umemiya was helping an elderly man with his cell phone, 2 older women commented that the situation in their streets was getting worse, but whenever Umemiya was around, that part of the street seemed to brighten up and come to life. While Umemiya was laughing with the townspeople, they suddenly heard a loud crash, prompting one of the people to comment that it happened again. Umemiya immediately ran to see what the problem was and reassured them that it was okay, and he would take care of it. It turned out that 2 groups were fighting to see who was the winner, and as soon as Umemiya arrived, he caught their attention. He asked if he could talk to them, which irritated the 2 group leaders. Umemiya took the hat of one and the scarf of another and invited them to chase him. Soon, they reached under a bridge, and Umemiya apologized for bringing them there because he didn't want them to fight in the town. He returned the items he had taken but was grabbed by the collar by the 2 men who were furious with him. They demanded to know which gang he was affiliated with, but Umemiya just smiled and explained that he was just a junior high kid who loved the town. He asked them not to fight in the town. Umemiya smiled at them, and the two men felt a chill, wondering what was up with the kid they were looking at. Annoyed, the two men charged at Umemiya, shouting at him not to be arrogant. In response, Umemiya dropped the items he was holding, and since they seemed to only understand fighting, he delivered two strong uppercuts, knocking them out instantly. The companions of the two men were shocked, thinking Umemiya had the strength of a monster, but some of them said not to be intimidated by a kid and charged at him. As they were about to attack, a loud voice shouted, catching everyone's attention. Angry, a young Hiragi, then 15 years old, walked towards Umemiya, complaining that they were supposed to meet at 4:30 p.m., and asked what time Umemiya thought it was. The men were scared and moved out of his way, while Umemiya scratched his head and said he didn't know. Hiragi, furious, shouted that it was 4:47 p.m. He angrily told Umemiya that he hated people who couldn't be punctual. In the next scene, Umemiya is smiling at Hiragi, while Hiragi is visibly annoyed with him. It turns out that Hiragi was the one who beat up all the guys there, and he yells, asking why he had to be the one to do it. They climbed back up to the path, with Hiragi stomping in frustration, still irritated about having to do it. Umemiya praised him, saying Hiragi really saved him and that he was incredibly strong. Hiragi snapped back, asking what Umemiya was thinking while smiling like an idiot as he watched Hiragi fight those guys. Umemiya complimented Hiragi, saying he was cool and had even said earlier how shameful it was for those assholes to surround a junior high kid. Hiragi calmed himself down and explained that he was just saying what was on his mind, but the guys attacked him anyway, even though they shouldn't have. It appears that even back then, Hiragi was already experiencing stomachaches. Suddenly, Umemiya had an idea, which made Hiragi curious. Umemiya took a leader-like stance and invited Hiragi to enroll with him at foreign. Hiragi's eyes narrowed, and he commented that Umemiya always says things out of the blue. Hiragi stated that he had already told Umemiya this would be the last time he listened to him. Before he could finish saying that if Umemiya didn't convince him, Umemiya cut him off, saying he would never show himself to Hiragi again. Hiragi sighed and explained that Umemiya had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and wouldn't stop following him. Even though Hiragi had told him he didn't like his face, Umemiya still came to his school to bother him. Hiragi didn't ask for it, but Umemiya kept talking about wanting to be the top at foreign or protecting the town. There were even trivial things about how food tasted better when eaten together, and Umemiya didn't seem to know when to shut up. Hiragi said he didn't care if Umemiya wanted to boast, but he hated people who were all talk and no action. If all the nonsense Umemiya was spewing were just lies, he would definitely make him pay. Hiragi looked at Umemiya with irritation, and Umemiya commented that Hiragi seemed really angry, but he knew Hiragi would still listen. Umemiya said Hiragi was an honest and upright guy, to which Hiragi replied that he really couldn't deal with him. While hanging out by the bridge, Umemiya explained to Hiragi that currently, the town was as hectic as the Bakamatsu Revolution. There were enemies attacking from outside and fights breaking out inside, making everything uncontrollable. However, despite that, the Shurshur activists held on to their beliefs and continued to pave the way forward. They formed connections and became a united force, facing the same direction together. Umemiya said he wanted to make that happen at foreign and turn it into reality. He intended to take the top seat at that school. Once it was unified, all the internal conflicts would stop, and they could focus on the external enemies. That way, everyone at foreign could work together to protect the town. Hiragi suddenly commented that it will never happen, explaining that while Umemiya may want to protect the town, and that has been his goal from the start, for others, it's far from the case. Even if the orders come from the top, he can't imagine anyone willing to continue protecting the people who hate them. Umemiya smiled, and Hiragi added that the townspeople will never forget what happened to them. Such a huge rift won't close just because they received a bit of help. As long as that rift exists, everything will revert to how it was before, with people fighting all around the town. Then Umemiya asked Hiragi why he thought foreign students didn't care about breaking things in town or causing trouble for the townspeople. Hiragi was puzzled, and Umemiya answered his own question, explaining that it's because they know nothing about the townsfolk. If people know nothing, they won't care either. So the solution is simple. They just need to learn about them, and once they do, they will start to care when something breaks. Hiragi was right if he didn't know, and there is indeed a large, deep rift between the townspeople and the foreign students. But to overcome that rift, all they need to do is build a bridge. Umemiya explained that he often goes out into the town with his friends who attend foreign. And little by little, they're building deep connections with the townspeople. And then, he'll create relationships with the people in foreign, and once they know and learn about both sides, they can become the bridge for them. Hiragi understood and said that means they will connect foreign and the town, to which Umemiya agreed. He said he's trying to think of different ways to tackle that, but his friends suddenly had a great idea. Hiragi was curious, so Umemiya explained that their idea was to patrol the town. They need to show their faces in the town regularly, so when fights break out, they can stop them quickly, and they can also talk to the townspeople. He knew it wouldn't be easy, and no one would suddenly agree to be their friends, plus the problems with outside teams wouldn't disappear quickly. However, one day, he would make that town a place where everyone could be happy together. Hiragi understood what he was saying but questioned why he needed to be part of the plan. Umemiya already had friends willing to help, and they knew what they wanted to do. So why did he need Hiragi? Umemiya smiled and explained that Hiragi is a strong fighter and a man of his word. Plus, many people are willing to follow him, and Umemiya thought that was truly impressive. While Hiragi was saying that Umemiya could find someone else, Umemiya reasoned that the biggest reason he wanted Hiragi to join him was because Hiragi hated him. Hiragi was surprised, and Umemiya added that because Hiragi hated him, he wanted him to stay by his side. He explained that what he was about to do would drag a lot of people into it, even though it was something he selfishly wanted to do. And if he ever made any stupid and irresponsible decisions, with Hiragi's strength and logical thinking by his side, he wouldn't hesitate to bring him back onto the right path. Then, Hiragi suddenly laughed loudly after hearing that, making Umemiya wonder what the problem was. Hiragi laughed and explained that Umemiya was seriously crazy, to which Umemiya just smiled and added that he would be happy if Hiragi ended up liking his personality. Hiragi commented that that was the reason he hated him. After their conversation, it was shown that the current four kings, Tsubakino, Mizuki, Momose, and Hiragi, along with Umemiya, went together to foreign high school to start pursuing Umemiya's dream.